Hi everyone, I want to welcome every single one of you to my third episode of COVID Recovery Story, where I hope to bring you hopeful, uplifting, and energetic stories of recovery and focusing on folks who are on the front line of this battle, movers and shakers who are making a difference. And hopefully, despite all the sadness and darkness, I can bring you some hopeful stories. Now, tonight we are going to New York. We are virtually going to New York, the hardest hit state in the United States. As many of you know, New York City is the densest city in the US, and unfortunately it has been hit the hardest. Now tonight I'm really excited to be joined by Nikki Vargas. She is a Colombian-American New Yorker. She and her partner were both diagnosed with COVID-19 but have recovered. So that's a good story, and we are going to focus on that. Nikki is a travel enthusiast, she's a food aficionado, and she is incredibly well versed in all things travel and food, and we're going to talk about that in the days where many of us or around the world can't travel. With that said, Nikki is also the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Unearth Women. It's a publication founded by women for women, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. With that said, let's bring in Nikki to the conversation. There she is. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining me today from New York, my old home.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me and for inviting me on.
Of
It's
course.
a pleasure to join and to speak to you in person.
Virtually. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really excited. I think, in every episode I try to go to a new city and, reflect on stories of hope. And New York is very special to me because, as you know, I live there. And your story is inspiring, not just because you recovered, but also the work you do and the message that you try to spread with your work. So I definitely want to talk about that. I definitely want to talk about Unearth Women, your experience with travel and food. But first, how are you doing?
I'm okay. It's been a couple weeks now. I would say maybe about 2 weeks since my cough officially subsided. And we tested positive on March 17th. We got the results. But by the time the results came in, our symptoms had more or less started to decline. So, okay, I'm hanging in there. We're hanging in there. I think, as my boyfriend likes to say, bored is good. And bored means you're healthy and you're happy. Well, you're healthy and you're staying at home.
Right.
And so
Right.
I am grateful to just be.
You're doing some great cooking. I want to talk to you about that. But you're the first New Yorker that I'm speaking with, and as you know, and as you know, we all have heard, New York is the hardest hit state, and Manhattan has been, hit the hardest in the United States, among the hardest. What was it like when you and your boyfriend were first starting to get the symptoms? I'm sure there was a lot of anxiety, and I'm sure a lot of people out there will feel that anxiety because you didn't know that it's COVID. So tell me about the emotions. How did you cope with it? And what are some tips you can give to the audience?
Absolutely. Well, being right now in New York, it's, as I'm sure it's like this in other places too. It's just so in your face, and it's so prevalent what we're going through. And we live in Queens. Queens is the epicenter of the epicenter. And when we go outside, to just sort of give you an idea of what it's like, you go outside and of course everyone's wearing masks, everyone's wearing gloves, everything is shut down. There's signs everywhere saying that you can't enter unless you're wearing a mask. We live 5 minutes walking from Mount Sinai, Queens, where there's 2 refrigerated trucks for the deceased parked right there. So it's really jarring, and it's inescapable.
Right.
really is the word. But to answer your question, you know, when I started getting sick, it was the week of March 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I started getting a sore throat, and I hadn't thought much of it because I had actually, the city wasn't completely shut down at that point. People were
Right.
starting to work from home, and there was sort of this slow, almost like rumor spreading through like the city that
Mm-hmm.
like certain companies were letting people work from home. My company at that time had not. And I was in the city, and I had a sore throat, and I didn't think anything of it. And the next day it sort of progressed. It progressed into a cough. And the next day my boyfriend started mirroring symptoms that I was feeling. And over the next few days, it really started to escalate from sore throat to a cough to body aches to chills to muscle aches to headaches to a fever as high as 102. And it I will say that the worse than the symptoms was absolutely the anxiety. The anxiety of, is it this virus that everyone's talking about that's on the news
Right.
24/7? Could it possibly be this virus? And if it is, you know, my boyfriend's asthmatic, so it's like then there's that fear because we at that point we knew less than even we know now. So
Right.
then there's fear of it attacking the lungs and how it could affect him. So I remember at this point in time, I just really was focused more on battling the anxiety because I like
Oh.
anxiety, so many symptoms of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
actually mirror some of the symptoms of coronavirus, the
Right.
tightness in the
Right.
chest, the shortness of
Just of the
breath.
breath. Right.
Exactly. So I remember like both of us just trying to treat it like a cold. You know, we were um drinking tons of orange juice, taking vitamins, using Advil to manage our fevers, taking zinc, walking every day to keep our lungs like moving, like keep them air flowing. And that really helped a lot, just sort of deciding mentally that we just have a cold. and that and it's almost like a, you know.
Right. Right. So you emotionally prepared yourself that we are going to fight this, and we
Yeah.
want to keep going. And then you went and you tested. I read the article that you wrote on Unearth Women that I encourage everybody to go on the website and take a look. A lot of great tips you shared. When you went in, they tested you and then they gave the results back after a week, and by then you and your boyfriend were already getting better. How is testing in New York City right now? Because in London, it's a bit more difficult to get tested. Right here in Stockholm, where I am, you have to go to the hospital and they test you right then and there and they give you the results.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with testing right now? Were you worried about your test result, or did you wish you would have it earlier?
I absolutely wish we had gotten it earlier. When we decided to get tested, it was really just sort of throwing a dart into the darkness. We called a clinic up the street, Northwell Health Clinic, and just gave them a call, and I didn't even know if they had testing available. Or I didn't even know how much it would cost, because at this point stories were coming out that people were being charged exorbitant amounts of money for this test. So it was really just a shot in the dark. So we called the clinic. We had to have a phone screening first. So they asked us about fever, which we had, shortness of breath, which thankfully we did not, coughing, which I had, and then underlying ailments, which my boyfriend has asthma. And so between the two of us, the clinic was, basically told us to come in the next day. Going in, it was, sort of interesting because we had to stand on the street corner and basically we paid $75 each copay for our tests. We had to stand on the street corner for 15 to 20 minutes while they prepared to bring us inside. And then they came outside, gave us masks, immediately ushered us into a side door in the clinic where we waited for the doctor. And at that point, the test was the nose swab. So it was this long, almost like what is, like the pipe cleaner, almost like a, yeah, so uncomfortable. They gave it like sort of a jab in each nostril twice. And then we left, and I remember what the doctor said, which I think is such a good piece of advice, is that he told us then and there, he's like, he said, most likely you have it, but you should be acting like you have it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the advice being that no matter how you're feeling, just out of safety for not only yourself, but people around you, like, you should be listening to the CDC guidelines. You should be wearing a mask. You should be wearing gloves. And so by the time we got the results, which was a full 8 days later, it didn't change much about how we were sort of living, because we were already being super cautious with masks and gloves and sanitizer and social distancing. So it didn't change anything. It sort of more so validated the fact that what we had felt was actually this virus. And it wasn't as scary, I think, getting the test results as some people might expect, because by that point our bodies had started to recover. Whereas if we were in the thick of a 102 fever and coughing, and then somebody said, okay, you have coronavirus, I think that sort of emotional jarring response would have been a little bit harder to work through.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And as you know, the purpose of these interviews is to take away from the anxiety and the sadness and, the depression that one way or another a lot of people are feeling worldwide with this pandemic.
Yeah.
And focusing on those who have recovered, because while there are many losses, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have recovered, like yourself and your boyfriend. Talk to me about uplifting moments that helped you, wake up in the morning, in the midst of, your fever while you guys were ill, because my partner and I experienced it, and, it's very difficult to keep up the spirit, but you still can.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips? Do you have any, ideas and suggestions you share with others out there who either might be sick right now, are upset about it, are feeling depressed, or are having anxiety about possibly getting sick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think anxiety it's very difficult, and it's okay to, I think I was talking to my girlfriends about this, and early on, we were sort of on a daily basis expressing our frustrations. And one of the things that we were saying is that whatever you're feeling right now is okay. It's like, this is one of the times in life where you should be kind to yourself and give yourself permission to feel the entire spectrum of emotion here, because this is unprecedented and it's very difficult, and much of the stability that we all had a month ago is gone. And that's very hard. And I think exerting energy to battle with yourself and battle with emotions, it's not a good use of time. So I have good days, I have bad days. I was having good days during the virus, I was having bad days. And what helped me was just allowing myself to feel whatever I needed to feel. And if I woke up and I was unproductive and I stayed in pajamas all day, then that was what it was. And if I woke up and I had coffee and I did XYZ and I worked out, great. And just not fighting with myself and making a conscious decision to not fight with myself. And also just connection, just looking for opportunities to connect with people. And even in talking to you and sharing this story, I found that in being open about the fact that I got COVID and my boyfriend and I got COVID, and sort of how we dealt with that, so many people came out of the woodwork to just talk about their own feelings and anxieties. And so even though we're all alone in the sense that we're socially separated, as as the tagline of this goes, we're all together in it.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. There are a lot of couples that are, for lack of better words, stuck together, because I don't think any couple spends this much time with each other 24/7. What are some good stuff that came out of this that you can share that other couples may also want to hear or learn from or take away?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we're spending so much time together, but it's nice because it's a bonding experience. You're going through a moment in history really together, and you're navigating this new normal together, and all the beauty and pain that is part of that encompasses this moment. My boyfriend and I, we are playing board games. I am now kicking his butt in Rummy Cube. I will say I'm the defending champion. You know, we have collected enough wine to basically host a wedding. So, um, yeah, and I think just looking for like little moments of joy. You know, like we have a dog and a cat, which we love them to bits, and I will say having a dog is probably the biggest blessing because it forces us to go out of the house 2, 3 times a day to take him on a long walk and to run with him and play with him. Yeah. So that is a big help too, I will say.
That's incredible. Let's talk about gratitude for a minute. I find it that, you know, we tend to forget the little things that we should be grateful about in our day to day. And perhaps COVID is a moment where we can take a step back and be grateful for the smallest thing that maybe 3 months ago we didn't realize. And I tried to practice gratitude, and I realized that, oh my goodness, there are so many things that we can count. Were there things that came to your mind after COVID or during your fight with COVID that you didn't think of before that you can share and maybe remind others to think about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most obvious things is just technology. Oh my God, I am so grateful for technology. You know, just being able to connect with family and friends, and oddly enough, I'm connecting more so with family and friends than I normally would because we're all so busy and we're doing, you know, we have our schedules. So I'm so grateful for the people in my life and for the ability to keep in touch with them during this difficult time, I have to say. And also, like, it's sort of funny, like there's like nostalgic gratitude, like things that I used to complain about, like crowded subways or being pushed down the streets by New Yorkers. Like, oh my God, I miss my New Yorkers. I miss being shoved in the subway. Like, I miss the crowds and just being out there in the city and never knowing what's going to happen next. So I'm so grateful for the city and the people in it.
Wow, no, New York has some of the best people, I think, despite some of the and the big crowds. Tell our audience who is not from the United States or may have not traveled to New York, tell us about that bond that right now New Yorkers are feeling despite all the sadness and, you know, the tragedy that the city and the state is going through. But tell us about some of the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most beautiful things that is happening in especially in our neighborhood in Astoria is every day at 7 p.m. without fail, the entire community cheers for the healthcare workers. And I, again, we live right up the street from Mount Sinai Hospital. So we've actually walked over there with our dog at 7 o'clock to cheer. And it was in the first time we went, a fire truck came up and all of the firemen stood on the truck and applauded the nurses and doctors and medical staff that came outside and took a bow. And it was so touching. And then the next time we went, the NYPD came out and they blasted over their speakers, Bob Marley, everything's going to be okay. And it was just such a beautiful moment, and you're just seeing humanity find its way to the light despite all of us being locked away. And in my community in Astoria, one of the most beautiful things is that all of the restaurants and locals are coming together to feed the hospital workers. Every day they're getting huge shipments of food. They're giving masks and donations, and these are all grassroots community efforts by people that just have taken it upon themselves to help out the neighborhood and help out the healthcare workers.
Oh, that's incredible. Really, I think the humanity in many of us is coming out despite the darkness that this illness has posed. Now, Nikki, I want to talk about Unearth Women, and I also want to talk about your passion for food and travel quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of the viewers are probably missing the fact that they may not be traveling anytime soon. I see in your Instagram all the beautiful food that you cook, and before that, all the fantastic places that you would travel to. First, let's talk about food. How are you, both as a food and travel editor, using food specifically to find a new routine. Go through your day to day in this confinement, I should say.
I have fallen in love with cooking. It's funny because my mom is an amazing chef, and I know everyone says that about their mom, but she's a fantastic cook. And my grandma is a fantastic cook as well, and it never really sort of got to me. Like I've always just ordered food, and I've always been too busy for it.
Be a food
And
editor.
yeah, and
Oh,
I absolutely love cooking, and I consider it my saving grace during this quarantine because it it's basically like assigning myself a fun project 3 times a day, and I feel productive, and I try out new recipes, and it pushes me out of the apartment to go grocery shopping, and it's also a way to connect with people online. It's just I have completely fallen in love with cooking, and in a way it sort of fuels travel because obviously I can't go anywhere, but I'm cooking recipes from different parts of the world and different cultures, and it's a way for me to still get that sort of like exploration vibe, even though I'm at home in pajamas.
oh, I love that, and that you segue to my next question. As an expert travel editor now, not food editor, um, what are some tips and tricks you can share with our viewers on going to places, learning about new destinations, and finding themselves in environments that they've never been before? How can they do that again in that sort of the confinement of their home and apartment right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple ways to do it. I think what you're doing is a perfect example. I think just being able to reach out to people in different cities and different parts of the globe and to just talk about their experience, I think that is such an incredible way to step outside of your own world and just connect. Virtual travel obviously is huge right now. Unearth Women has a guide that we're constantly updating with ways to see the world, and it includes everything from virtually traveling along the Great Wall of China with this gorgeous 360-degree cameras to virtually laying on the beaches of Maui. So there's a lot, again, being grateful for technology, there's a lot of ways that you can still see the world, explore exhibits of museums like the Louvre or the Guggenheim that you maybe wouldn't get to, or maybe didn't have any immediate plans to do, but you can right now. So, you know, I think that there's a balance between wanting to do as much as you can and feel productive and learn a new skill and see everything. But I do want to sort of tie it back to the sentiment of whatever you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, it's okay. And if you feel like walking the Great Wall of China and cooking a meal, awesome. And if you feel like just moping around today, that's okay too. It's all okay.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and I think right now people have a moment to think that we can be authentic to ourselves, not just to others, but with ourselves as well. So you mentioned Unearth Woman, and I kind of want to close the conversation with that, because now that you are thankfully well and healthy, and your boyfriend is as well, you're both COVID survivors. What will you be working as far as your travel articles or your work with Unearthed Women? Because I want to ask the viewers to go there, to, like you said, virtually go to China and to all the other exciting places that you have on there. So we'll put the link up there. But what are you working on right now? And if you want to share anything that our viewers can take away.
Sure. Yeah. It's a tricky time. And as every single company is having to do right now, we're all being asked to pivot and to get creative in this completely uncertain time of both health scares and an unstable economy. And Unearth Women, Unearth Women is a travel publication. And right now the travel industry is suffering. And so I do think that we're sort of past the point of creating travel guides as aspirational content, because the fact of the matter is that we can't rightly put out travel guides without knowing what restaurants or hotels or small businesses that we would normally point to are going to be left standing after this. And that, unfortunately, is the reality. So what we're doing over at Unearth Women is we're shifting gears, and instead we're leaning in to the current reality. And we're asking for women to share their stories with us from coronavirus, from the front lines of the pandemic. We have some exciting stories coming up in the next few weeks of nurses on the front lines, women that are organizing grassroots organizations, and these are stories that take place anywhere from France to New York to all over the globe. And really, the mission of Unearth Women at its core is to celebrate women and their stories, and we're going to continue to do that, even in the face of adversity and even in the face of a pandemic.
Even if
And
we'll travel and food.
Yeah, so we're
yes.
Yeah, you know, it's funny with the food thing. I have to figure it out. I have to see. Like I've been putting up my cooking my cooking adventures on Instagram, which is completely new to me. I've only done travel. I've only been very sort of like one track mind. So this is an entirely new part of myself that I'm exploring, and I think that there could be something there, and it could be something fun, whether it's sharing recipes or doing something along the lines of sort of like to exactly what we were talking earlier about, sort of tying travel and like a global palette together, but remains to be seen. But right now it's very much sort of creative juices are flowing, and we're all adapting to this new normal.
And that's perfectly okay, but also exciting. And I
It
think
is.
for people who are watching, like you said earlier, food, cooking at home can be a way to travel, and you're precisely doing that. And I think that's an exciting maybe tip for others to explore. Well, I'm really glad that I had a chance to talk to you and New York with you. Um,
Thank
and
you so much again for this opportunity. And also, like, I want to just give a big, like, tip of the hat to you, because you're doing exactly what people should be doing right now, which is connecting, letting people share their stories, and just sort of bridging the gap right now. Because, again, like, all of us feel alone, all of us feel untethered, all of us feel separated, but it doesn't mean that we have to be. And so I think this is a great example of what people can do.
thank you so much. And I will put the link for Unearthed Women because I really believe in your mission, Nikki, and I think
Thank you.
a lot of other folks out there, especially women, will as well. So continue cooking, and we can virtually travel with your food. And I'm really glad that you guys are healthy and well, and I really wish well for New York. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, and stay well as well, and stay sane, and keep it up.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thanks so much, guys. I'm really glad that we had a chance to go to New York. As many of you know, like I said earlier, I used to live there, and my heart goes to every single New Yorker, every single person who's been affected by this, one way or another, all over the world. And I hope our conversation today brought a little bit of laughter and smile and hope to your day. And on Monday, I will see you next, and we will go to Miami. So stay tuned next Monday for a trip to Miami where we will speak with the mayor. More on that next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining me.